And so it was a strange act, right, of her letting go of something and recognizing, and not out of choice, right? Like she was preempting, knowing that someday, like right now, in fact, I won't be able to do this anymore. This thing that
Mhm.
I've hidden away that used to be a love of mine and I could probably still do, but I know I'm going to lose it.
Today's guest is a creative force who's mastered the art of reinvention. He's launched 4 startups, created campaigns for AT&T and T and the National MS Society, and brought laughter to the Second City stage. As the founder of Molting Men, he's building a community for Gen X creatives ready to shed what's no longer serving them and take control of what's next. Everyone, please put your hands together for my guest, auGi Garred. Welcome, auGi, my friend. How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for inviting me here, Ashley.
Of course. Always a pleasure to chat with you. We chat weekly. And so now I feel like it's an opportunity for others to meet you and learn more about you and all of the amazing work you're doing. I kind of teed it up there. I'd love to know, I know, but I think our guests and watchers would like to know what are you up to and what led you to this? And I won't give it away, this unique work that you've been doing for people in the community and the Gen Xers like me.
Yeah. So, the last year and a half, I have been on a journey to help others do what I've done multiple times, and that is to let go of the past and focus on what else could I do with my talent, with my what I call superhuman gifts, aligned in the right context to make an impact in the world and also to earn income. Does that make sense?
Craziness. It does. It does. Alignment and income and impact. I love it. So tell me, so obviously I know, but like, so this has come in the form of Molting Men. And so, why don't you tell me a little bit about that program, the people that are going through it, and then we can get into what I know is this interesting journey of how you arrived at that place.
Sure. Yeah. So basically, the idea is this: it started off with a cohort in July of 2024, and I brought people through an 8-week course that I had developed, again based on my own experiences, to help them do this. So, let's say there's people who are, like you said, Gen X creatives. They've been in the agency world or in house at some company, probably 20, 30 years, and they've never done their own thing. And now we're at this sort of precipice of kind of a really scary time in history, right? Where eh, lots of people are getting laid off. AI is now nipping at our heels and could be a potentially very bad thing for a lot of people, myself
Hmm.
and yourself included. So instead of waiting for that to happen, what I work on and what I help people do as a community, it's not just me, right? Is help people, first of all, let go of that attachment to the past and see beyond it, right? And there's a thing I came across recently when I was reading about Michelangelo, and it's called non finito, non finito. And the premise is that unfinished business. And when he would carve a sculpture, he didn't like do the traditional thing that most sculptors would do, and he would just start carving, right? So he had a vision, but his belief was that instead of doing all these technical things, I guess, where you're like drawing lines and you're doing whatever, he would just start carving away, knowing that the sculpture would reveal itself. So the form is already there,
Hmm.
right? And just a matter of me, like this act of destruction almost, right? Chiseling away the exterior to find what's inside of it. And I think we're all the same. So as creative guys, we've done all kinds of things in our life, whether it's in marketing, again, or advertising. I'm a designer, I'm a writer, I'm a filmmaker, whatever. We've done these things for a long time. But what we've forgotten is what's really inside. Like there's an idea there, there's a kernel,
Hmm.
right, of something else we could do. We just can't see it. So the process is this: people show up and we kind of break down, whatever those barriers might be to see that. going back in time to see your origin story, what you loved as a kid, what you're obsessed with, what you imagined yourself doing in the future. Because I found that those connections to the past actually reveal a lot about who we are and ultimately who we could be, or what we did do, or what we could be.
Hmm.
And it's kind of clearing that stuff, clearing what I call kryptonite. So, what are those sort of personal demons that we're dealing with? And then ultimately, over the course of this thing, is revealing what is that kernel of an idea that I could pursue. So, for example, there's one guy, and I won't share names because
Hmm.
I want to respect that. However, who came into this process, hadn't worked in a while, and he'd never done his own thing. Had worked at one company for 20 years, got laid off, and was kind of doing the typical things, right? Going on LinkedIn, updated his resume, all that stuff. Had gone on a lot of interviews. And then, of course, like a lot of us out there, got ghosted mostly, right? Hundreds of times, and was just so burned out and so, you know, I guess you could say distraught, right? Like, what
Hmm.
am I going to do? Because all I've ever done is worked inside a company. And through the process, he now has launched a small venture that he's really passionate about. And he had his first sale a couple weeks ago. And this is a story that's very common, right? People come in, again, attached to the identity. I was a designer, I was a writer, I was a producer, whatever. And they kind of realize, like, you know what? I'm bigger than that. I'm more than that. I have more potential. And once they kind of let go, right, of the attachment, which I've done myself several times, so I can attest to this too. It's not easy. That's the first big part of it, right? And then start seeing new possibilities. And that's where this particular individual is now, along with a lot of other people. And it could be anywhere from like I'm starting a side hustle, I'm working on a screenplay, I want to go work, I want to help out a nonprofit who's got a dog rescue. So, however, it presents itself in a variety of ways, but the idea is you walk away in that first phase with a kernel of an idea that you then go on to test, get to minimal viable product, and then start to build. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, you kind of touched on or maybe glossed over what is, in my experience, having gone through this and also gone through one of the cohorts with you, is this incredibly important reawakening, I'll call it. I think, as creative people by nature, when we were younger, there was that natural curiosity, to kind of figure it out and explore and that kind of thing. But over the course of 20, 25-year career, you tend to want a certain level of certainty. And what I experienced was that reawakening of that curiosity. And you mentioned identity quite a few times. And you didn't mention this, but I know it's a critical part, which is rediscovering or identifying those superhuman gifts. And so, do you want to tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's based on something I observed from my father. So my mom called it charm and disarm. So this is just one example. So basically, to me, it's everybody's born with certain, predisposed, let's say, to certain talents, right? And characteristics, whatever you want to call them, or aptitudes.
Hmm.
And my dad clearly had this natural ability to be funny, which he cultivated over time. So we all have, I think, these sort of superhuman gifts that we're born with. Maybe it's an ability to organize or to help communicate ideas that are super complicated in simple ways that anybody can grasp. The difference is this, that you're born with it, right? You're hardwired for it, but do you cultivate it?
Mm.
Right? And it becomes second nature. So for my dad, charm and disarm is this. So imagine this. It's 1976. I grew up in a little town in Michigan, and we heard about Red Lobster. So this is kind of a big deal, right?
Yep.
I grew up in a farm town, and there was nothing there. And so we went into the big city of Lansing, the state capital, and there was this new thing called Red Lobster. And I remember the first thing that happened when greeter welcomed us in, my dad started joking around with them. And immediately this person's laughing, total strangers laughing. And we get a nice table, which what seems like a nice table to me, right? And then the server comes over. Dad starts doing the same thing and they're laughing and having fun. And within minutes, like free popcorn shrimp keeps coming. And this is before that was a thing, right?
Hmm.
And I just was thinking, how in the hell is this happening? Like, I want this superpower. A better example of that is my mom um, was a Bionic woman, and she was like running around the house, cleaning and cooking and gardening. And get this, Ashley, my mom vacuumed the closets.
Damn.
Have you ever vacuumed your closet?
I don't think I ever have.
No. Okay. Not only did she vacuum the closets, she vacuumed them twice a week.
Wow.
So I guess you could say she might have been a little OCD, but she was highly motivated and highly organized. And so she was constantly on the move, right? Lots of juice.
Hmm.
But over about a year-long period, she started having these moments of double vision and loss of balance. And I remember one day, this is, I think I was about 9 or 10, she fell on the floor and she could not get up. And I said, let me call dad, because dad had gone off to work. And she's like, no, don't call your father. And I didn't go to school that day and I just laid with her,
Hmm.
because I couldn't pick her up. I'm a kid, right? I'm a little kid. How am I gonna pick my mom up? And she just insisted, like, don't get help. And dad came home, and he was mad at me. Like, why didn't you call me? Well, because mom told me not to.
Hmm.
And that was kind of the precipice, I suppose, or a breaking point where they knew they need something was going on. That's pretty
Hmm.
hardcore. And so they went to the University of Michigan Hospital in Ann Arbor, which is about 2 hours away from where I grew up. And mom was gone for over a month. So imagine you're a little kid and your mom starts going from the bionic woman to this person who's going through some weird stuff, right? That's I don't understand. And she's gone for 4 weeks or more. And I really missed her. And the day she came back home from the hospital, because we were not getting any intel from my dad about this, my brother and I, right? And we're in the kitchen. My brother and I are waiting for mom and dad to show up. So they go in the garage, door opens, dad rolls my 40-year-old mom, who, again, right, was very physical, very active, into the kitchen in a wheelchair.
Hmm.
And I remember just being terrified, like, oh my God, is mom going to die?
Hmm.
What is this thing? And my dad explained that she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, MS,
Hmm.
and that it was going to be very difficult and or things would be more difficult for mom. And after he explained all that, and I don't remember all the details, but the one thing that stands out is after standing there with my brother and my mom and just freaking out, and of course giving mom a hug and just watching this thing, like I'm almost out of body experience. And my dad, he he again, he put charm and disarm to use here. He said something like, well, you know how your mom vacuums those closets every week? Well, guess what? She can no longer do that. So now you guys get to do it. And he
Hmm.
said it in a way that was like really funny. And everybody started laughing.
Yeah.
So this intensity, right? This fear that filled that kitchen just disappeared instantly. And I look back at that moment and I think my dad, his gift was this, that he took that sense of humor, right, that he was born with, and he had cultivated it to such a degree that he could take a moment like that and completely change the atmosphere and make it okay.
Hmm.
So that is an example of taking this thing that you've cultivated over a lifetime and put it into use as a power tool, right? Suddenly humor isn't it's not jokes, right? It's
Mhm.
not he's not doing stand up. He's not the life of the party going around, ha ha, right? Not that he didn't do that. It had a genuine purpose when channeled in that way. And I wanted to be like that. That's what I mean. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that first of all, I mean, it's an amazing story, and I've heard like variations of it and expanding on it in through our conversations over the last several months. But it's especially with your father, that charm and disarm is something that I can relate to. My father was that way, and I know I picked that up, that he could walk into any situation and make, I mean, he was always, we'd be out for dinner and he'd strike up a conversation with the people at the next table, or the, the wait staff or whatever it was. And so and it's interesting then how have sort of not cultivated, but it's just become part of who I am. And when it's so interesting, you talk about like the superhuman gift and then cultivation of it. I think, through our experience working together, I was able to start to see that that was one of my gifts. And I was unaware that I'd sort of been cultivating, and it wasn't forefront, it was just kind of there. And it's interesting how it then led into refining my side hustle, refining that what's next for me.
Yeah,
And
I'd be curious. Do you mind if I ask you a question?
please, yeah.
So now that you said that, I'm curious. So, first of all, I want to compliment you because the first time we talked, we instantly hit it off. And when you say like your dad was conversational, it's not like your dad's going over there hogging the conversation. It's this chemistry, right? Where he's creating a moment where you truly connect with somebody, right? And you feel so embraced by it that you can just open up. So it's not like he's going blah 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 blah. It turns into this like reciprocal moment, which is you're brilliant at. So I'm curious how you said you recognized it, right? That oh, I have this thing, but how have you put it into action?
Well, so I think, like so many people, there's something that you just inherently, you maybe you had or you experience, whether it's parents or others, that you sort of internalized. And I've been this way, I think, through most of my life in different situations. My kids have commented on it. But it wasn't until I think we started working together and that group dynamic of really seeing that is something that's not just like a quirk, that's not just something you kind of do, but it's an element of something that you can really hone and work into what's next. And so for me, it was really this realization of something I was doing as kind of a, not a throwaway, but it was just something I enjoyed, which was essentially having conversations like this, interviewing interesting people, people that I vibed with. And it was that insight and that process of going through the cohort that realized, like, no, this could be something more. This could really be, and I've said this a few times on calls, that this is really that thread that runs through all the things that I've done and all the things that I'm working on now. And it's so interesting how before we started working together, this is a great example of that transformation that you talk about. Before we started working together, I would think of my consulting business, my podcast, and then my previous career in the corporate creative world as kind of three distinct sort of things orbiting around. And they were orbiting around me, but there wasn't really a clear connection between them. And I think what I gained from working with you, and what I see in the other people that have gone through it, is it's almost like this sort of forest for the trees. You need that other perspective to help you see that. And now when I talk about it, and I literally just before this, when we were on a call together with the group, I brought up that thread that I now see that connects between all the things I'm doing now. They aren't disparate kind of things. And also that clarity. I mean, you talked about that. I think, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that that creative, conversational charm and disarm element that your father brought. And I think that sort of tenacity and perseverance and stick to itiveness that I perceive in the way your mother moved around the world, pre pre her illness and probably with her illness as well. That's what I see in you. The fact that you are bringing this to the world, you are helping people, you are helping them see through it. And I know because we've worked together and I've watched you with other people as well, that someone they sort of hit a wall. They can't see it. They can't see the forest for the trees, and you're able to kind of look at it from another perspective. And whether that's charm and disarm, or your mother coming through and saying like, "Hey, let's figure out how to solve this," that's what comes through, and it's powerful. And I can say firsthand that I've experienced it for myself, and I see it every time we work in the group.
That makes me feel really good. So before the call, if I may, what you just said made me I want to pull up something.
Okay.
So I have this on my wall. You probably can't see it very well, but it's something my mom wrote.
Hmm.
So, her handwriting was severely compromised. So just so you know this, my mom was a secret artist. She was an illustrator that I never knew about. I think I might have told you this story before, but um, probably about a year or two into her diagnosis, and I'll get back to this and I'll tell you why what you said is relevant. A year or two into her diagnosis, she came to me one day and she said, with this like a scrapbook, you could tell it was from the 50s.
Hmm.
It's had that kind of writing on the cover, and it was full of drawings that I had never seen before, and they were beautiful, like faces and landscapes and flowers and stuff like that. And it intrigued me because I had just started drawing at that age. That was my first love. And I was so excited about drawing, Remember how when you're a kid, you just can't wait
Yeah.
to do that thing you love, right? And I said, "Mom," "Who did these?" "I did." "What?" And I remember just being shocked because I had no idea my mom could draw because I had never seen these drawings. So she was hiding them somewhere in the house. Now, here's the turn. This is my mom. I want you to take them to the burning barrel and burn them.
Wow.
Yeah. And as a kid, I was kind of confused, like, why would you want to do that? No, 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 you just do what your mother says. And I'm a kid, right? So I'm not going to argue with her. Just like the day she fell on the floor and she didn't want me to call dad, I paid attention to what mom said. And so, a burning barrel, for those who don't know, is a big oil drum, like one of those 50-gallon oil drums. We had it out in the backyard, and I took it out there. And it was in full view of mom in our big picture window. And I went out and I lit a fire, and I remember just not wanting to do it. Like, every
Hmm.
part of my being said, "This is wrong," but mom's watching me, and
Yeah.
so I just one at a time, I just dropped them into there. And it makes me think of that song by Johnny Cash, "Burning Ring of Fire,"
Uh-huh.
because the song's about a love so deep, you can never extinguish the flames.
Hmm.
And so it was a strange act, right, of her letting go of something and recognizing, and not out of choice, right? Like, she was preempting, knowing that someday, like right now, in fact, I won't be able to do this anymore. This thing that
Hmm.
I've hidden away that used to be a love of mine and I could probably still do, but I know I'm going to lose it. Now,
Hmm.
as a
Hmm.
kid, I didn't make all those connections
Yep.
clearly, but I do
Yep.
now. And it was I mean, just what a bold move, to
Yeah.
like let go of that. Years later, so this thing I was showing you, this is from 1991. It's a letter she wrote to me, and she could still write okay at this time. It says, it's April 20th, 1994. So what's that? Is that 30 years ago?
Yeah. 30, 31 years ago.
Right? And she says hi, and it's just kind of random stuff. But here's what matters is the clip out she has. She used to do this. She'd cut out things from Reader's Digest and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's of Edward James Olmos. And he says this: it's a matter of choice. Mexican American actor Edward James Olmos grew up poor in East LA. 11 family members lived in 3 rooms that included a kitchen with a dirt floor. His parents divorced when he was 7. Today, he visits kids in jail. Says Olmos, "I tell them we're all given a choice. Some people say they didn't have a choice. They're poor or brown or crippled. They had no parents. Well, you can use any one of those excuses to keep your life from growing, or you can say, quote, okay, this is where I am, but I'm not going to let it stop me. Instead, I'm going to turn it around and make it my strength. That's what I did. The closing line in my mom's letter to me,
Hmm.
she said, you can do or be what you want to be. I'm gonna repeat that. You can do or be what you want to be. Love ya, ma and dad. And
Wow.
I believe that holds true whether you're 30 or you're 60.
Yeah, I mean it's such a powerful way to look at the world. And I think w- for many of the people I think that you're bringing into the work you're doing and the work you're doing in general is, we know people have been laid off, people have been fired, people have run into, XYZ that's derailed what they're doing. And, you can sit there blaming AI, you can sit there banging away and submitting stuff on LinkedIn and complaining, which I've done. I think we've all been there, so no judgment. Um, or you can have that moment of insight, that moment of clarity, and say, I'm going to figure out how to move forward and use the things I've got. And it's such a powerful shift. I think we've talked about this on some of our calls. It's like this idea that you should, you're the round one trying to fit into the square holes all over the place that, LinkedIn is telling you how to do it, or the industry is telling you how to do it. The irony, I think we talked about this early on, but the irony that, we are of that generation, that Gen X generation that was like, we don't want to do this. We don't fit into any of these things. We're going to create our own thing. And it's ironic that then we sort of did. We created positions for ourselves. We were dealing with digital publishing and, then the internet and media and all these things. And then it's like we've been spit out the other side, and we've been sort of corporatized and kind of squared off to fit into whatever bucket it was. And now it's like, no, 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 this is your chance. And I think it is something you can look at in two different ways. But if you look at it the right way, it's your chance to blossom and really rediscover those things within you. And I would say with full conviction that for anyone listening who's in that position of that pre-transformation, that pre-realization, you need A, to be aware of that and make that decision, but B, have some sort of guide, have a community, have people that are there to kind of give you, reflect back to you. And I'm reminded of, there's a great line I've heard from Brene Brown, who talks about this, that by the time we reach middle age, whatever that is for you, we've built up an invisible armor to survive that, to get there. How we've dealt with trauma, dealt with emotions, dealt with successes, failures. And that unless you recognize that that armor exists, and unless you work hard to shed yourself of that, you dramatically minimize your potential in that next phase of your life. And so it's I don't know. I feel like we're all kind of circling around this thing of identity and that transformation. But I really, I think what you're doing is powerful and amazing. And so I thank you for doing it. I thank you for putting it out there. And and we can transition now. We can talk about Rush. We can talk about cat scratch fever. We can talk about a whole lot of things. And we haven't talked about your stand up comedy routine, or many routines, I would think, and all the
Oh,
things
you
you've
mean
learned from
from
it.
a
But
long time ago?
from a long time ago, all these transformative elements on that journey of
Yeah.
auGi.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'll tell you quickly that. So I co-founded an agency back in the mid 90s, and it was early stage, digital stuff. And 3 years or so into it, we got acquired by the Borg.
Org.
And I say the Borg because it was a Fortune 1000 privately held company, and they wanted to expand into web. And so, what better to do than go buy up, somebody who's doing it? So we were a small agency. It was three people, real boutique and we were in like a, 1,700 square foot office. Within 3 months of the acquisition, we had expanded to 60 employees and had built out a beautiful architectural palace of 10,000 square feet. So we were cash infused, and I was, cash infused, if you can say it. Went out and I bought a house, I bought a BMW. Suddenly, I was like a little playboy, like, oh, I always wanted to be James Bond was when I was a kid, which, I'm kind of a nerd.
Yeah.
I was like, this was a weird thing, but anyway, it was pretty cool. It was more money than I ever thought I'd ever made before, and, it was great, or so I thought. But I felt lost because this thing, right, this baby I had helped shape into where it was now, which was a fantastic journey, suddenly was in the control of somebody outside my power. And those guys were all about money. Oh my God, Augie, you could be driving around Maserati like I am, or, blah, blah. It was always money, 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 money. Like, God, these guys had no heart. And I don't want to blame it entirely on them, but
It's
um,
okay. You probably can blame a lot of it.
we went from doing like, maybe our largest job ever had been a website or some kind of website for maybe like Intel for 75 grand, right? To suddenly our first client was $1 million. A website for $1 million. Imagine that now. No. And that was huge, right? And so that was exciting. But again, I kind of checked out because I felt lost. Again,
Mhm.
because I'd gone for I didn't want to let go of the boutique agency mindset and this sort of small, kind of agency thing. And I've always been a troublemaker. And
You? Really? I can't imagine.
no. Yeah. And so I just was resistant to blending into this thing, and I just felt I was miserable. I this girl I had met the day we signed the check, okay, or got the check from these guys. I went on a date with this woman, and who's now married to somebody very famous, weirdly, that you would know. Anyway, so that was kind of excited. Like I met this woman who was way out of my league, right? And that was great. The money was great. However, we ended up breaking up. And so my heart's broken and I'm miserable. I'm directionless. Then the dot com crash happened. Boom. And March 1st, the big agency, they lost like $1 billion one quarter or something, some insane amount of money. So it trickled down and killed everybody, right? So we went from like this $1 million account to now we can't get a $75,000 job. And we started laying people off. So over the course of the next few months, we were laying off people in rounds, and unfortunately, I was often the person that had to deliver the message.
Ah, good
Um,
times.
my mom and dad, the only thing good that whole summer, and I have this picture that's on my desk. Um, the only thing good was when my mom and dad came to visit that summer. They stayed with me in my new house, my old house, but right, the one I had bought, the first house I ever owned, and dad helped me remodel. And it- I remember my dad said, he goes, "I've never seen you this down before. I've never seen you this depressed." Because I'm not a depressive person. I'm lucky.
Yeah.
I've always been kind of up tempo and optimistic and happy. But man, dude, I was so low. And so it doesn't, the lesson there was money is absolutely an essential thing to live in a capitalistic society, unfortunately. However, just because you get a sudden rush of cash, it ain't going to make you better. It's not going to fill the holes, right?
Mhm.
And in fact, it might have the opposite effect. And so that whole year, I felt like the Hanged Man. It's a tarot card that somebody did a reading. You're-
Yeah.
like you're going to go through this year where you're hanging upside down, and man, she was accurate. And I just felt lost. So the week after Thanksgiving, both my founding partner and I got laid off. And I have to tell you, man, as much as that sucked, it was the first time I had been laid off. It also was the Trojan horse that set me free and woke my ass up.
Mhm.
And I had this inkling for months that I was gonna be in entertainment, but I didn't know how. So, after going through those stages of grief, like anybody does after a death of any kind, right? And I started reading a lot and doing a lot of self-reflection, and I read this book called Soloing by Harriet Rubin, and in the book, it's about she was a Doubleday, the publisher. She was
Mhm.
like an executive, and she had kind of reached the peak of her career, and she went out on her own, and so she was a soloist, right? She started soloing, and there were 6 questions in this book that she asked, which is part of the cohort, right, that you went through, that sort of unlock, I would say, they're obvious now. I'm like, why hadn't I ever answered these questions? Like one of them was, what's my most distinct or personal characteristic, right? Something like that. And she challenges you to go out and ask the people that respect you most to answer the question. You remember doing this one?
I do, I
Were
do. It
you
was a
surprised
sup
at some of the answers, or what? How did it make you feel when people wrote back?
it was powerful because, to have people you trust, whether they're family members or good close friends or coworkers, like, give you that honest insight is, it's a powerful thing because 'cause they're seeing what it's like you can't see it because 'cause you're too close to it. You're not looking at it the right way. And, that, I mean, we've talked about sort of my gifts and what I've cultivated. I mean, that was something that came through, is this awareness of something that I gave off, I brought forward that I wasn't even really appreciating.
Yeah. And so one of the thing, thank you. So if I may pause for a second, because I should have had this out, but a lot of the framework that I've built is comes out of this journal. I call it the Big Red Journal. So this is from 1999, 2000, and this is where I started doing all this work. So the book was a starting point to start thinking about stuff. Of course, I've always been super um, I love writing. I always journal. I'm always trying to work through problems. I love mind mapping, but so I start just mind mapping stuff like crazy, right? About
Mhm.
my life and what's my mantra? What like implicitly simplistic? What? I don't know what that means. But I just started writing like my personal traits and blah 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 and what is cool work to me and yada yada yada. So then I got to these 6 questions, right? And this is that one, right? So, what's my most noteworthy personal trait? And I wrote, so she asked you answer it yourself and then ask people that you know. So, I wrote my ability to make others laugh. But one of my closest friends said this, my ability to help others see more than what's there.
Mm.
Another person said motivating people to do things they were afraid to do or didn't think they were capable of doing.
Wow.
Now, you know me. How is that accurate or am I high? Or are they high?
Well, someone might be high, but I don't think it's an inaccurate observation, from what I've seen. And what year was that you
This was
asked this
in
que
2000,
Okay, so 25
25
years
years ago.
ago,
Yep.
and, here we are. I think that what was observed there and what was shared by those people is 100% bang on with what you are doing. And you do it with good humor and energy and, all of those things. So it's pretty wild how, it's one of those things you can't see it going forward. You have to look back and see the thread, the connection. And it's wonderful that you have that little piece of ephemera, that physical item that's sort of like this little moment in time where you can go, look, right there.
Yeah. And back to you're right. And back to the stand-up thing, right? So as I'm going through this process, right, I'm trying to in addition to the book, which gave me some good ideas to like think about, but ultimately, you have to arrive at your own, reaction. And so I just kept writing, 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 writing. Okay. This is the most important, I would not say the most important page. This I wrote, okay, It says possible modes of expression. And I had this idea I came up with years before that because I was a artist first, and then I was a musician for a long time. And I thought I was going to be the next Rush, right? The Neil Peart, the drummer. Don't laugh.
Are
So
you still wearing the shirt? Boom, there we go.
I am, I am
Rush
so
reference, Rush shirt.
there you go. And part of Molting Men is we always have to have at least one Rush reference per call.
Of course, of course.
So um So I thought that's the only thing I could be. That's when I was convinced as a 13-year-old that the only path forward is as a professional musician. And I was dedicated to that mission for 14 years. I could see nothing else pointing out to what you said earlier about the forest, right? You can't see beyond it. And so that's what I was obsessed with. And that's all I wanted to do with my life. I was working at AT&T during the day to fund my passion, writing songs and recording them in my house. And one of my coworkers, who I still work with to this day, he's my silent partner. Um, he he said, Augie, he goes, if you want to be a musician, he goes, why are you working here? He goes, because I'm like, well, because it pays the bills. And I'll tell you why this is important actually, because as dedicated as I was to being a musician, you know what I didn't do? What's like the most important thing a musician who wants to be a professional musician should probably do, besides learning how to play an instrument?
Um, be performing, be writing songs, be
Correct. Yes.
all of the above.
Yes. Go out into the world so people can hear your music, right? Get in front of an audience, right? Like a stand-up comedian needs to get in front of an audience to learn the art, but also to actually do it, right? A public speaker has to be in front of the public to be a professional public speaker. So the one thing that I had always been terrified of since I was a kid, despite maybe performing around the house and with my friends, all as my friend Lance says, all for me, all the kitchen's a stage. Okay. But I was terrified of the thought of like actually performing in public. Like I'm not good enough. That kind of perfectionist trap.
Yeah.
And so I actively avoided it. And instead I focused on like, I'm going to build my own studio. I'm going to write songs. I'm going to be a producer, even though I still wanted to go out and play. But so anyway, my friend said, either pick that path and like just quit AT&T and T and do it, or he goes, the alternative is at AT&T, take the account executive path. I'm like, what's that? So he explained, what an AE was. And I was kind of intriguing to me because I had worked for AT&T for a couple years at that point, and I had never known about this, like I can be an executive. What's that mean? Oh, you're going to go out and have like a territory and sell. This is back, during the long distance days.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's not exciting stuff, but I'm like, okay. So I started going down that path and I worked my way up. Let me tell you this. I worked my way into inside sales. Ashley, get ready. Ready? I managed 300 accounts in Montana where I would sell Pro Watts. I know, riveting, right? Which is a calling plan for businesses, or 800 numbers. So I was calling people up, hey, Jim, what if I know how we save money for your long distance bill? What if I could help you increase revenue through an inbound call system? Right? And these were accounts I managed. I wasn't cold calling people, okay? These were my own
Yeah.
accounts, but I hated it. Fucking hated it. But while that was happening, suddenly the internet happened.
Uh-huh.
And my friend Gary, who's my developer now, he turned me on to Mosaic. Remember the first
Oh yeah.
browser?
Yeah.
And the GUI interface. I'm like, what graphic interface? What's this? Because at that point there was AOL and CompuServe, right? So he showed me this thing. I was like, holy shit. Now it was very primitive, but it was cool. And as soon as he showed it to me, I was like, holy shit, that's what I want to do. And so I pitched my current silent partner. I said, "Hey, what if we start a web design shop?" And this is again super early. AT&T didn't even have a website, right? And he get this, he's in Saudi Arabia at the time. He's the marketing manager for the Middle East for AT&T. And T. And so he's calling me every day from Saudi Arabia while I'm at work, and we talk for an hour a day. And we think it was like $3 and some cents a minute. we probably racked up 100 grand bill that AT&T had to pay for over the course of a year working on this agency idea. And that unlocked something in me. I realized, oh, maybe my mode of expression isn't limited to, a drawing or as a
Hmm.
musician. What if I was a web designer? Oh, boom. And then it made me realize, oh, wait a minute, there's something even further down below all of that is like, I call it the prime mover. Like, what's really at the root of who I am? I'm a creative person. I can find all kinds of modes of expression to explore, right? And from that, I built, get this, I read that like HTML in 7 days. Remember
Yeah.
those big ass books you could buy?
Yeah.
And this guy I worked with, he's like, hey, I'll code it if you build a website. Why don't we build one for the branch? So we worked up in the Pacific Northwest, and I designed it in PC Paintbrush. I didn't have Photoshop, and and wrote all the copy, and I handed it over to this guy Gordon, and he built it in HTML, and we showed it to my boss. And my boss goes, "Holy shit, this is cool." He goes, "What? Let's show it to the branch manager, Cleve." So
Believe.
he set up a meeting. Cleve, the branch manager, and the branch business manager, basically the COO, show up. And so, just for context, this is a branch of about 250 employees, about $100 million, I think, in revenue. No website. AT&T corporate doesn't have a website. Nobody has a website yet.
Yeah.
We show them this website thing as a side project, right? I did it for fun after
Yeah.
hours, and we show it to him just as a thought, like, hey, maybe we could use this as a way to help sell more long distance bullshit to
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
customers, right? And he goes, after we did the presentation, he was like, how would you like to do this full time? I couldn't believe it. Like, what? Somebody wants to pay me to do that? Are you fucking kidding me? Yes. It didn't happen right away. It took a year, but eventually I went from my early job at AT&T in Kansas City as a lowly inbound telemarketing rep taking long distance customers calling about their bill to moving to Portland, working in the business center, getting promoted to inside sales, working, for clients in Montana, to now I'm the director of new media in the Northwest, which was huge. And
Yeah.
suddenly I'm flying all over the place. I'm doing presentations. I'm talking directly with clients, and I helped them figure out a way to sell this new product they had launched, and I rebranded it Zoobox. Let's say it was this. It was just internet hosting. And it was called Easy
Yeah. Yeah.
World Wide Web. Doesn't that sound easy?
Totally. Totally.
I said, no, that's not cool. And nobody could sell it before they hired me for this job. It was they had sold like one because they were charging an exorbitant amount of money for hosting. I
Yeah.
said, no, no, no. And one day I just had this idea, like hit me in the middle of a manager's meeting. Like, you ever have one of those heaven meetings? Like, all of a sudden the big idea comes into you, like boom. And I
Yeah.
stood up and I just drew the whole thing on the board. I wrote Zoobox. I don't know why the fuck that name came to me, but that's the word I saw in my head. And the whole thing just came into view. Like, it's going to be the inside out, upside down, out of the box e-business solution. And we're going to bundle it internet at hosting, email with consulting. So not and we're going to do a templatized website. I don't know
Hmm.
how I fucking all of it just like a revolution. Like God had opened like auGi, hello, and they said yes, and they gave me a team of 10 account executives. And 6 months later, we were selling $500,000 worth of this thing, like in recurring revenue, and it was huge, and it launched my life.
Wow.
And that's a pivotal fucking moment where, again, revealing what's already inside you, if somebody just gives you an opportunity, right? Or if you start moving forward proactively, in this case, I built
Yeah.
this website for fun, and the dividends have paid off over the last almost 30 years. Huge asymmetrical return, right? You put $1 in, you get $1 back. In this case, I put $1 in and I got like $500,000 back over the last 25 years, probably. So that's what I'm talking about. If that makes sense. And anyway, I never got to the damn stand up thing.
I didn't
You
want
know,
to interrupt you. You were in your flow.
sorry. Anyway, so I got laid off. from a jo from after that led me up to the agency thing. I got laid off, and I tried to again, back to the music thing, right, which is all this is where it's about, right? I was terrified of performing, and after I got laid off, I tried to avoid it again. So during this work, right, uh, I wrote possible modes of expression. Author, motivational speaker,
Ooh, that would have been
DJ.
interesting.
Yeah, right. DJ, hey, welcome to the Shed and Vapor Show. We're coming down. We're down the. Hey, it's 5:30 a.m. We're here at the Kmart parking lot. Come down and get a free keychain and T-shirt. All right. I wrote live theater, performance artist, presenter, teacher, drama coach. Okay, whatever. And then I over the side I wrote live performance. What are the whatever? It doesn't matter. The very top thing I wrote, stand-up comedian.
Mm,
Okay. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, I did everything in my power to ignore the call to that again. And I'll just say this beyond being a musician, as I said, my friend said, all the kitchen's a stage. Ever since I was a teenager, my friends, my family, my mom in particular said, you should be a comedian. I'm like, I want to be a musician. I'm not going to be, I'm going to be Neil Peart. I'm not going to be, whoever. So I had ignored it. So I ignored it again because I was still terrified of performing, even though I did a lot of that kind of stuff when I was at AT&T. Instead I went on I bought a 12-month round the world trip ticket, and I was going to start in Portland and end in Kuala Lumpur without a return flight.
wow, there you go.
Now, just to be clear, I didn't have like eat, pray, love money. Okay, I wasn't like a fucking multimillionaire or anything, but I sold everything I owned, my house, my car, everything, clothes. I had an auction, everything, and that helped me fund this trip. And I took off. Now, Ashley, I'll have to tell you, have you heard of a shapeshifter?
I have.
What is it?
Well, I've heard of it. I'm just now you're asking me to define it. I mean, it's really I mean, it's as the name would imply. You've got different forms in which you show up to the world the way you can. Yeah, so go ahead. Explain it
Yeah.
to me now.
So a shapeshifter in mythology, right? You're correct. Is someone who changes shape in sort of a way. So like like the mermaids, so
Mhm.
or sirens. They
Yep.
they lure right the ship in because the guys are like, oh, there's hot women over there on the island, and what they don't realize is they're not actually hot women. It is dangerous rocks that are going to destroy your ship and sink you.
Yeah.
So I had met this woman right before I took off on my trip, and kind of was one of those instant love kind of things, which is all bullshit, but whatever. I was pining for her the whole time. I'm like in Europe, and I was in Belgium. I remember Antwerp in particular because I had a beautiful waffle, and I was at an internet cafe. So this is before mobile phones, and I didn't have a laptop with me, and I go check my email, my Hotmail, probably right.
Yep,
wonder,
totally.
wonder if that thing still works. I got this letter. Okay, this email. It says, "Dear augie," and let me set up context here. I had invited her to join me on the trip, and I said, "I'll pay for it. I'll pay for you to travel for like a year." That's a pretty good offer, right?
That is pretty good, yeah.
A little crazy because I'd only known her for like 2 weeks, but whatever. I was a little crazy at the time. You're like, then you were crazy then. Give me a break.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah. So I gave her this offer, and I was going to go back and visit her, and then when because she wanted to think about it a little bit, and then we'd plan it, and then we'd take off together. That was the plan anyway. So I'm in Antwerp, and I get this email. It says, "Dear augie, I've been thinking.
Uh-oh.
We know where this is going." And immediately my heart's like, "Oh shit." Well, we haven't known each other that long, and I talked to my mom and my sister, and I think it's best if you just continue on your own, and then when you come back a year from now, we can talk. And I was just like devastated. Let's just say this, Ashley. There's a great line in mythology that Joseph Campbell pointed out. He said, "A man in love is capable of incredible feats." Okay. So within an hour, I was on the phone with American Airlines. I had booked a flight back to Portland the next day. Okay. I go to Paris, Charles de Gaulle, get on the plane. I'm over the Atlantic, heading back to Portland to try to rescue this relationship. And I'm writing in my journal and I'm looking out the window. I remember this thinking, like, why am I going to spend a year traveling what I already know when I already know what I want to do with my life? And right there, I said, you know what? I'm going to move to LA and I'm going to go try stand up. And I fucking did.
Nice.
6 months later, so about a year after I got laid off, I was standing on stage at the world famous improv on Melrose, doing a set in front of a sold out crowd. And I'll say that to be clear, you don't just go down to LA and 2 months later you're doing stand up at the improv. It was because I was in a class with the co owner of the improv.
Mm. Hmm.
And as a result of the class, it ended with a performance. So it helped me accelerate my progress because let me tell you, doing stand up is not standing in the kitchen making your two best friends laugh. Just like, as a keynote speaker, hey, hey guys, let me tell you about my day. Like, okay, that's great. Now try to do that in front of 600 people, right? Mm-mm.
And
Completely
have it
different.
connect and have them get value and have it relate to what they're interested in knowing. And
Exactly. And now you're trying to, like, on command, on demand, 250 strangers walk on stage, try to, like you said, connect with them, overcome whatever stereotype they have of you now that you've walked on stage and you're in the spotlight, win them over and take control of the audience because that is the secret sauce, right? Connection and command, right? Because you're leading them and you're having this kind of weird conversation where you're telling jokes or what, or stories or whatever, and the conversation is the reciprocity of laughter. That's their way of communicating with you, and as a stand-up, right, you're sharing whatever. Now that did not happen. It took me a long time to get there. Took me about a year, year and a half to where I found my footing and or started to find it, and took me years. And I spent 7 years doing that. I went through Second City's conservatory program, so I learned all about improv, and I started producing shows and writing. And I had a hit show at the improv because they have a whole chain of comedy clubs around the country, and they had 4 in LA.
Mhm.
And I had a hit series, and we actually pitched it to several networks. And someday I'll tell you that whole story because it's quite fascinating. In fact, the guy that's joining us tomorrow for our send off Molting Men Tree Fork Friday of the Year, he was the guy that I partnered with to create that show. And we're ultimately pitching it to all these networks. So you're going to love his own story because now he's blown up and now he's like worked from everyone from Conan to this Late Late Show to going on tour with these big comics. And he recently was at the Kia Forum opening for like some Jimmy O Yang or somebody.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, I never got there, but the whole point of that is to say, I transformed from this guy who, again, was a kid who wanted to be I guess, draw, to a kid who wanted to be a musician, to this account executive sort of level person, to eventually, starting an agency, all of these like pivots, right? Boom, 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 boom. Not even pivots, I would say, completely different things, but they all inform the next thing, right? And and that work I did, right, as a stand-up, using dad's charm and disarm, ultimately led me to where I am now. And one last thing, because you know what? I guess you probably want to do other things with your day. Um, I want to honor my mom here for a second. So, my mom, the one who was always encouraging me more than anybody in the world to try stand up, I got laid off in 2012. This is where Molting Men really started. I got laid off, and I quickly realized there are no support mechanisms for people like us. You can't, you go ahead, go to a networking meeting and say, "Hey, I just got laid off." People don't want to hear that. Maybe more now, but there was still a big stigma attached to it. Like he
Yeah.
got divorced back in the 50s. Nobody I knew had been laid off. None of my family had. Nobody could relate with me. And I started writing about it because it was so frustrating. And I started writing this book called Running Naked Through the Valley of the Unemployed, which is in draft 18 as of now. Years later, I finally picked it back up. I'm going to finish it. But I wanted to say this through, again, I went back and I read those big six questions from that book that I had read, 12 years before that. And, and I discovered some new things. And Ashley, I'm not shitting you. I have this in a journal because I was talking about what are possible ways I could express kind of what I'm going through, right? Like what I've learned in my life. And one of them was work in some capacity for the National MS Society.
Mm,
So
mhm,
again, my mom's diagnosed in 1975. And the only encounter I had had with the MS Society back then was through support groups that she went to. And then I had started a show, and I know I could talk like 12 hours. This is stupid. Bottom line is this: I wrote that down, and because I had met the chapter president here in Oregon through a connection, and I had volunteered and I had done some speaking stuff for them and done a little video for one of their events. After I got laid off, I started reaching out to them. A year and a half later, they hired me full time as a marketing director. I worked my way up to VP of marketing and events. And the best part was this: I got to put all those superhuman gifts into action along with all my hard skills, right? Writer, designer, video editor, public speaker, stand up, every
mhm.
show producer, everything in a context that had such a deep personal connection for me and was making impact. It was the first time I ever really felt like, wow, I am in exactly the perfect place for who I am. And I got to share my mom's story with thousands of people around the country, and it was unbelievable. And unfortunately, it was several years after she had passed away.
Mhm.
But I knew she would be proud of me, that her son, back to the Edward James almost thing, right? What'd she say? You can do or be what you want to be. I still believe that to this day. And I believe that for anybody out there who's going through a hard time, who's not sure what the future holds, are uncertain about their career or their financial position, whatever it might be, you can still do or be what you want to be. No, I'm not saying you should go out and try to be Mick Jagger. Okay. But there's a practical thing that you can do and it's inside you already. You just
Mhm.
gotta chisel away, right, what's outside to see it, and maybe you'll make your own David.
No, absolutely. That was wonderful. I appreciate the way you brought it right back full circle. And I liked you said that, it's right, you're right where you need to be, right where you should be. And I think that for those listening, those that may find themselves in a spot where they're not sure what's next, but they know deep down in their heart, much like you do, much like I do, much like all the people that we interact with in the Molting Men, they have value, they have wisdom, they have expertise, they have these burning insights that need to come forward. And so I want to say, first of all, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your stories and sharing your journey. And to anyone listening, I encourage you to, don't try and fit into that square peg that's not you. Don't try and keep banging against that wall. Instead, have those moments of reflection. And as I said, look for help, ask for help, get guidance. And so, with that in mind, auGi, how can people get a hold of you? How can they learn more about the program and how they can participate?
Yeah. The best way is just to go to Molting Men, so I'm sure you'll share the link, but it's molting like shedding, not not molding. So, I do have
Molting.
a little mold. Molting, MOLNTING men.com. Go to that, and by the way, just for the ladies, we are going to launch a woman powered version of this in 2026. We've been working with guys because we know that guys, just like women, they feel safer to talk about stuff when they're, together. So we're going to be doing that. And that's where to find out. And then you can look at my LinkedIn profile. You can learn about the programs and you can read a little bit more about my story. So there you go.
There you go. Well, auGi, thank you so much for all that you're doing and all that you continue to do, and all the the pivots, the ups and downs, the challenges that life has thrown at you, just like everyone else gets hit with them. And I'm glad you've taken that learning from your mother, from that insight to know that you're in the right place and know that you can do whatever you need to do to be that strength, that next step. So thank
Thank
you,
you,
my
Ashley.
friend.
It's been such a pleasure and a joy. And I just want to tell you, as someone who encountered you first, I think in the summer, I'm so grateful that whatever happened in the universe opened up and brought you into my life. You have brought so much joy. And I know you have also lifted the spirits of so many people that are going through a hard time at Molting Men and the work you do through the Impact Tribe podcast. So thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that. That means the world to me. And so again, anyone who's out there, you're not sure what's next. You have value. You have a place. You have an amazing journey ahead of you. And so I encourage you, whether you want to reach out to me or reach out to auGi, ask for help, ask for that guidance, because we're here for you, and it's awesome. So um, thank you again, my friend, and I'll let you get back to your day, and I'll be able to. I don't know if my kids are hovering outside waiting because I put a podcasting session on the front door or not, but I guess I'll
Mm,
find out.
yeah. Well, anyway, good to see you, Ashley. Thank
Y-
you.
You too, my friend.
We should end on one thing. We should end on a
What's
Rush
that?
tune. No, no. Wait, I'll say it. Okay, here we go. Um, Today's Tom Sawyer, he gets high on you. When the space he invades, he gets spy on you. Bye, Ash.
All right, good to see you, my friend. Cheers. Thank you.